Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mary Sabatino. I'm the Vice President and partner at Galerie Lelong, and I would like to welcome you to our 26th conversation in the series Galerie Lelong Dialogue. Today's conversation is held in conjunction with Pamela Phatsimo Sunstrum's solo exhibition, Parabellum. You can see the images online and right here in front of you, and it's on view through December 20th. I'm honored to introduce today's speakers and to briefly share about them. If you'd like to learn more, please refer to our website for their full biographies. Starting with Pamela, Pamela Phatsimo Sunstrum is an artist whose multidisciplinary practice emerges from the investigation of systems of power. Her works make reference to literature, to film, theater, and other forms of storytelling to build a narrative. These sagas unfold within terrains that appear simultaneously futuristic and ancient, a patchwork of remembered landscapes from her upbringing in places such as Botswana, Canada, Sudan, Sri Lanka, Malawi, South Africa, and the United States. The characters in her work stand as a collective. They are a cast in constant flux amidst the slipping notions of selfhood and of belonging. Lauren Haynes is head curator, Governor's Island Arts, and vice president for arts and culture at the Trust for Governor's Island in New York City. For over 2 decades, Haynes has worked to build a more inclusive future for contemporary art through a curatorial practice deeply rooted in community engagement and equity. Her work spans exhibitions, public programs, residencies, and outdoor installations to amplify the voices of Black artists and others who are often overlooked by mainstream institutions. She found her path to curatorial work through a college work-study job at Oberlin's Allen Memorial Art Museum. This formative experience, along with nearly a decade at the Studio Museum in Harlem, shaped her commitment to representation at every level of the art world. Haynes was a 2018 fellow at the Center for Curatorial Leadership and a recipient of Art Table's New Leadership Award in 2020. During the discussion, please feel free to leave any questions in the chat. Our speakers will conclude the talk with a segment dedicated to audience participation, and then I'll come back on to bid you all goodbye. So without further comments by me, Pamela and Lauren, over to both of you, please. And thank you. Thank you both for. Lauren, will you come back online? Not sure if she lost contact. Oh, there she is.
Sorry about that. Of course, the day when this happens, the internet in my apartment decides to act weird. Um, Thank you all for being here, and thank you, Pamela, for joining me and for asking me to be a part of this. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you, and to talk a little bit more about your work.
Thank you so much, Lauren. I'm really looking forward to chatting with you. And yeah, I'm really glad that you agreed to join into this conversation. And thanks, of course, to Galerie Lelong for hosting and giving me a chance to sort of reflect on this show, even at a distance at this time.
Yeah, I think, the good and the bad and the stress of technology, it is lovely that it allows us to be able to have this conversation, and to really offer a chance for people that may not be able to see the show or haven't seen it yet or have seen it and want to learn more, really all be together with us in this space. So really, let's just start from the beginning. If maybe you can tell us just a little bit about maybe the title of the exhibition and your title of your works and sort of how that all plays together in what we're seeing and experiencing in the gallery.
Yeah, funnily enough, and maybe this is something that usually happens when I'm about to work on a sort of new body of work or a kind of a new suite of work, often language comes first. So often a kind of a title or an idea around a title sort of comes first as a, I don't know, as kind of an organizing tool, I guess, for me. And when I was invited to have this show and started kind of researching and developing the work around a year ago, in October last year, I was sort of floating around. I found myself floating around at Frieze Masters in London, and it was like quite a surreal. It's quite a surreal experience. I think yeah, fairs are tricky spaces in any moment, but Frieze Masters is a particularly sort of surreal space, and I had kind of always wanted to see it, to see that kind of crazy juxtaposition of art and artifacts and everything in this kind of huge spectacle. And it felt
Hmm.
especially weird in that moment because, as I said, it was October 2024, and there was just such a swell of horrifying news around the world. And to be kind of floating around in this like luxurious fair amidst this sort of pile of news was really a surreal experience. And I like to sort of start with this story when I'm talking about this work because I feel like this really is the moment that it took shape in my mind. I was kind of floating and came across this tiny Isadora Pills painting. And it was, yeah, a painting of a barber giving a soldier a haircut. Yeah, this one. Just a tiny, kind of really unassuming painting, beautifully framed and lit, really kind of understated. And
Hmm.
it was, yeah, just something that as old as this image was, really resonated with the moment I felt I was standing in, that, even, with the kind of smoke on the horizon and the real threat of danger, really all around the horrors of war, that this kind of moment of tenderness, of care, of humanity, really resonated with me. And it sort of allowed me to kind of give myself permission to kind of dig into this. Like, what does it mean to make images, to have the job of making pictures in this time? Uh,
Hmm.
it's it can be such a frivolous work to do. And then at the same time, it's kind of the most important, well, not the most important, but rather important work to
Pretty
do.
important. Yeah.
In that we're like image makers are kind of record takers. And I thought this was such a beautiful record of what can also exist in these horrifying times. And so, yeah, I started thinking about war and the preparations for war. And this kind of quote came to me, and I'm not sure where I first thought about it, but yeah, the word parabellum, like prepare for
Mm.
war, what does that mean? And then kind of finding that it comes from this longer quote, if you're seeking peace, prepare for war, which yeah, feels both cruel and kind of hopeful at the same time. And yeah, that kind of became this sort of rooting idea for the drawings and the paintings that came out.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that. So, sort of as you were thinking about this and the inspiration and how you sort of started with this idea, then are you sort of crafting or as particular narrative, or is there a particular sort of trajectory that the works are taking that as you're making them, you're like, okay, this first, then this, or how does that really all work
Yeah.
as you're really thinking about the next step?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I think it kind of all happens at once. I think in some cases there are particular images that I really quickly know I want to see when I'm kind of building a
Hmm.
body of work. And then in the kind of pursuit of making those images, other things start to happen along the side.
Mm.
So, um, yeah, that I guess the image that we're seeing down the down the way here at the very end, which is called "It Is Because I Want You to Go On," was an image that I think was one of the first that came to mind. I wanted this kind of uh, yeah, really bodily moment of care, of
Mm-hmm.
exchange. But I also wanted this to be like a bit of a complicated relationship too. I wanted to kind of flirt with, is this seduction? Is this yeah, are these figures on equal ground? Is this a sisterhood? Is this like, are these lovers? Um, and I really wanted to kind of pull at all of those possibilities in this one gesture, to kind of create this space that's really intimate, even though it's kind of outdoors. This space where both people, both the kind of giver and the receiver in this exchange, display a kind of vulnerability, whether it's kind of tiredness and exhaustion, kind of letting things loose, um, you know, being at the end, and I wanted it to be a feeling that is really familiar. I think a lot of people, certainly a lot of women, would would understand this moment in the day when you're taking off those shoes, right? The shoes that you are
Right.
ready to take off at the end of
Yeah.
the day. Yeah, I wanted to kind of drag all of that into this image, and so. Since this was kind of to answer your question in a roundabout way, since this was kind of the first image that came to mind, I wanted to keep playing with that. What other kinds of arrangements of figures, of narrative, of symbols, of garments can I start to play with to kind of get at that moment that is care, that moment where there is an awareness of the dangers of a larger world, but they are put to the side momentarily in order to kind of get at this other softer place. And a place that's soft, but itself also not necessarily without its own risks. So I wanted to play with that kind of yeah, that almost, I wouldn't say conflict, but that small power play that happens even within a cohesive group.
Right. This idea that there's a lot of interpretations or ways of really understanding what's happening and where it is and like what is this relationship and also what does it mean, I guess, as the viewer also to sort of enter in and really thinking about, to your point, the layers of care, right? And what
Right.
that means and if it's how it's given, how it's received is really, I think, spectacular. And in this painting and in this work, it's just there's so much in it. There's so much detail, there's so much layering of it, but it is that feeling, right? To how you sort of described it, I think is perfect. This idea of, oh yes, when you're finally taking off those shoes that have you
Mhm.
proud of yourself for making them through the whole day, but they also were
Exactly.
keeping you going the whole day as
Right.
well, and what it means to like have that moment
Hmm.
of relaxation and sort of to let that breath happen.
Yeah.
So if we think of this, or if sort of thinking about this as an anchor work or a work that you were saying, okay, I want to have this really set up some of the ideas and the themes that are really moving throughout the exhibition, were there other works that then sort of came and jumped like, okay, now these go together? And then also really thinking about, are there other ways, and other works that really do that in different sections for you?
Yeah, I think so. I realized when I was yeah, as I was making these, there were these kind of pairings that started to happen, and maybe not with every single work
Right.
in the show, but there are a couple. If we can maybe just take a look at like an installation view. Oh yeah, even from here, good choosing. But yeah, like let's see. Right. Okay. So maybe the two most next obvious ones to speak about are these kind of education or training
Right.
oriented ones. So there's one that's called By the Book, and then there's one that's called An Education. And
Hmm.
yeah, so I have this idea of war, preparing for war, care, but also yeah, going back to the preparation aspect of conflict, of battle, of war, but also of indoctrination.
Right.
And I, uh, I really wanted to show that moment of um, yeah, what it kind of looks like to get on board, right? Or to be asked to be on board and what how that presents. So wearing this kind of uniform, sitting in subject to, some information that you're receiving. And it's something that's familiar, anybody who's, been in a classroom or, maybe been in a workplace where you're being asked to sort of take on a kind of set of beliefs, about the world or about yourself or about history. And yeah, I found that to be a really important moment in preparing for war, but also in you know, being a part of any society. I was chatting about these images with somebody else a couple of days ago, and I was remarking about this. Memories that I was having of kind of being educated in colonial schools so the kind of upbringing I had with a lot of moving meant that often my sister and I were in international schools, usually colonial schools.
Mhm.
And so that has suddenly become such an interesting memory to me that to kind of be sitting in these colonial contexts and being, the subject to an education that is, written by the colonizer,
Right.
and how deep that is, how much that would shape your view of yourself, would shape your view of the territory around you, and that at such an impressionable age, you be asked to kind of bring yourself into this project of empire building,
Right.
which is crazy in so many ways, and not unlike military training, I can only imagine. So I knew that I wanted this moment of kind of planning, receiving information, learning, and whereas I kind of spoke about some of the more like challenging aspects of this, I also wanted to touch on this moment of uh, yeah, of being able to kind of gain knowledge through sharing, or this kind of grouping through sharing. I wanted to make these figures feel like a mass, like a real body of bodies, and I think that's why I made some of these choices here.
Yeah. And I think, I'm struck by the idea that, in education, colonial education, particularly in the military training, a lot of it is also you are being taught to do things in a very specific way, to act a
Right.
certain way, to dress a certain way, and to sort of not show a way of emotion, right, or a disagreement. So I'm very much struck by the varying expressions
Oh yeah.
on the people in your works, right, as a way in this and then in the previous image as well. There's almost you can sort of see the ways in which I think we all have varying expressions when we're in a classroom, when we're learning information, when we're in trainings, when we're in meetings. This idea of sometimes you go from being skeptical to sort of just full out disbelief to sort of like, okay,
Yeah.
this part's interesting, and just the ways in which you are able to convey that through the work and the very different expressions is really, I think, remarkable in this work.
Yeah, that was super important to me as well, to tease out, just as you say, tease out all the different ways that might feel or look on a body, to go through that process from, as you say, skeptical to horrified to
Right.
amused to, everything in between.
Right. And as we're here and really thinking about the people in the works, can you talk a little bit about this? I know you said that often you sort of get the question, are they real people? Are they meant to represent real people? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, yeah, they are, both very real and very unreal people. I think the
Yes.
figures in my work, that
Hmm.
they're really rooted in a real world that I feel I've built in my work over years. But this world is, very much a reflection of the world around us all the time. And
Hmm.
have spoken in the past about, using myself as the model in my work. And so this process of kind of embodying all of these characters and figures, makes them kind of real to me in a way, and is, I think, what allows me to play at multiple angles on a story or on an image. I, um, I think I like to, drag in a lot of details that might signal um, or be kind of a little bit of a navigational device to help the viewer maybe understand what I mean. But I also try to make those really not really not that recognizable. So for me, it's important that it kind of keeps slipping, that the Black Beret, I think, as being this really potent symbol for many reasons and across many cultures, but kind of always to do somehow with this grappling of power from kind of grassroots to like mainstream established systems of power. I knew that I wanted this world to be a world of women who smoke pipes. And I don't know why. It was just something, that compelled me, something specific
Right.
about them. I think I liked that it kind of offers this gendered, complicated gendered view, at least from a kind of Western perspective, where
Right.
like pipe smoking was mainly a kind of a man's or a male activity. But that's, not the case everywhere else in the world. There's many parts of Africa and Asia where pipe smoking is very much a woman's thing. And so I feel like I try to kind of gather as many commonalities or similarities or coincidences as I can in kind of building the details in my work, just as a way of like kind of hold gathering us all around. Like, yeah, it's actually all of us. If you see it, it's all of us. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I feel that completely because I think, given again the ways in which the variety of expressions and motions and sort of the ways also in which, though, yes, the faces look similar, they do not look like the same person, right?
Right.
And this idea that we're each able to, at least for me, when I look at your work, I'm able to sort of enter in and sort of feel like, oh, right, that's how I'm feeling, or that's something I identify with that pose, or even the way the styling is. So I think
Yeah.
to this idea of there's a generosity in that in your practice of that you're sort of not trying to sort of I think exclude, but to sort of say, right, how are we all really able to enter in and really think about this and identify or be like, oh right, that's how I would wear this, or oh, this
Yeah.
reminds me of this person, and how that really I think is a way in to your
Yeah.
practice and a way into people being able to not feel as if there's a block when they're trying to understand the work, right? But really to bring their experiences and the ways in which they are living into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the best.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. And so you mentioned that with this world that you've built with this work, but some of your other works really exists in a way. And can you maybe talk about how you see this particular show, Parabellum, fitting in with some of your past work and sort of that world that you're building?
Yeah, it's been so fun actually, to keep kind of giving myself permission to keep playing in this world that I've been building. I think it's a tactic that I really used very early. I think I
Mm.
knew that I always was interested in figurative work and narrative work, and I think I needed a kind of device to help me start building a narrative. And so, starting with kind of classical tropes in mythology,
Mhm.
uh, as some of the, kind of the early organizing tools for kind of building an image or building a group of work, um, you know, relying on kind of literature or references to other paintings, art history, film, television. theater, um, have all kind of been helpful in shaping the way that I build this world. So way back in my very younger days, and maybe every artist's early days, one of my favorite ways of making an image was to use collage. It was this
Mm.
one, and at that time, collage was like, scissors and glue collage.
Right.
Not and no hate to like digital collage at all, but it was a different process where you there's a kind of a real hunt involved, and because you're looking for
Mhm.
something specific, and the material is finite actually. So what's exciting about like digital collage is that there's an infinite amount of material. Like if you can think of it, you can find it. But then it was kind of digging through, free books and junk and garbage and advertising to try to make, something new. And so now when I see, images like this, I really remember the way I used to build images with collage, where, I would have, this little bit of a mountain and like a little bit of a river, and then there's a field, and it was all kind of found and layered and sort of spliced together. And when I see these, I still sort of think of that. Yeah, I wanted to share some of these older works because I was curious about how in the past I've kind of made these subtle references to this kind of military
Yeah.
world. And so I think, this is a like maybe nice way to end the answer to your question, that yeah, along the way, there's always these things that I'm gathering. And by the time I get to the story of Parabellum, I feel I have kind of built up um, this kind of archive of images or gestures that then I get to kind of expand a lot more in this entire body of work.
Yeah. And do you feel like that was a conscious thing that was happening that you were sort of like, okay, or is it just yet again, these are the references and the works and the sort of inspirations that you keep coming to again and again until you're finally like, okay, this is the moment where it all sort of
Yeah.
coalesces and comes together?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think I think it would be nice. I wish I could say that sort of all the it's really nice as an artist to try to put things back like in a chronological way, like to feel like it was kind of all planned and all sort of in
Mm-hmm.
a direction. But I do think that um I've been building this story for so long, and to me, it's one story, I think, from the
Mm-hmm.
beginning. I was joking the other day, like when I'm, 200 years old and they do like a mega retrospective of my work, I'll be able to kind of point with my cane, like, okay, this
Yeah.
one first, and then this one relates to that one. I do feel like it's this kind of one big sweeping saga. And what I like to do is just allow myself to keep going with that, to just keep building this saga in the work. And yeah, there's a lot to find for me in it. So yeah, it doesn't disappoint.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that will definitely happen before you're 200
Yeah.
years old. So we're all able to experience that and really have that moment happen. And I think, we are really all made up of all of our experiences, right? In this way of like
Absolutely.
all of the references and things that we've read, watched, lived, and all of this. And I wonder if you could talk about sort of, in the introduction, as Mary was reading, talking about the various places that you've lived, and you touched on that about the different schools you and your sister attended. Could you talk a little bit about how that has really influenced your practice and even in a way of, the landscapes that you are depicting don't feel like they're any one particular landscape, but they don't feel like they're not, if that makes sense. It
Yeah.
feels like
Yeah,
there's an
totally.
amalgamation of sorts.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, I think that, yeah, growing up and moving a lot, and finding ourselves as a family in so many different kind of cultural and geographical uh, locations just had a huge impact on my worldview. I think it wasn't until I was, 13 or so, 14 years old that I learned that the way that we lived was unique. Like I really thought everybody did this, every 2 years, everybody went somewhere else.
Right.
I've spoken to, to kids who grew up, with military parents or, other kids whose parents did the kind of work that I did in international development. And we kind of had a similar experience of feeling, um, yeah, like the set changes every every 2 years, and I feel really lucky to have experienced life in so many different places. When um, I was born in Botswana, and which is where my parents met. And my dad, who was Canadian, and my mom, who was from Botswana, when I was 4, started, really kind of a life of work that had us moving around. So we lived in Sudan in the 80s and Sri Lanka in the 80s, Malawi, South Africa a couple of times, back to Botswana. I studied in the United States, and was really lucky to also, when I was in university, find ways of studying abroad a lot. So kind of always, um, yeah, being like a kind of an observer of so many ways of living, I think has had a huge impact on me. And seeing coincidences and seeing diversions in kind of human culture and human etiquette and attire and music and landscape and food, um, has really shaped, I think, the way I see everything. And I think I see that in my work so much, that there's kind of a real insistence on a particular specificity, because it's that desk that I saw in that office at that
Yeah.
time in that country where we were applying for that permit. There's this kind of wealth of references that I'm constantly, trying to get at, to, yeah, expand this world that I'm
Right.
building and that I'm referencing. But I think more so, there's the kind of aesthetic impact, I think, of the work, the images that I make, and they're beautiful, and they do what they do visually, and I think there's also the politic in the work, and I think this way of growing up has had a huge impact on who I am politically in the world, and to see the reason why I'm constantly trying to gather so many references together in an image is because I got to kind of witness the sort of systemic nature of so many of these processes that we are living in the fallout from at the moment. So yeah, seeing cultural, political, economic, environmental injustice on so many levels and in so many contexts, and kind of tracing back to the same players, no matter how far from
Mhm.
those central empire builders we go, to see it over and over and magnified, has had a huge impact on the way that I think about my work and what I wanted to do in the world.
Yeah, no, I think, there are often these conversations when we are in these particularly, I don't know, fraught does not even seem like the right word, but these moments in our world where we're sort of watching things fall apart and just the
Yeah,
ways in which people's autonomy, lives are being taken away.
yeah,
But we also there's a tendency, I think, for sometimes for people to be like, how can this be happening? It's like, well, this has been happening constantly,
yeah,
right? It's like it's
yeah,
ongoing. If it's not maybe happening right down the street from you at this moment, it's happening somewhere and it will happen. And it really,
yeah,
to your point, is about these like the history of these power structures, right? And the systems of political power, how they have took root such a long time ago and really keep living and keep
yeah,
happening.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think in your work, some of the ways in which, to tackle a topic like war and what that means, and the ways in which I think, there's a history of paintings of war, right? And really how it happens and often told from the story of the victor, right? On Governor's Island where I work, we have some amazing WPA murals from 1932 in one of our buildings, and they are about war. And they're like
Yeah,
all of this sort of like this really interesting way of, right, when you're looking at this from many, many decades later, it's this like glamorous piece of, right, like look at this battle that we won, look at how we sort of triumphed. And I
yeah,
think the beauty in this project and what you're showing us is, right, what is that preparation of war and what does that look like? And how can that also, in a way, feel quieter, but not any less, I think, relevant or important?
yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another question I wanted to ask you before we sort of open it up is I really am drawn to, and I think when we were having our prep call was talking about this, your color palette and sort of
Mm.
the choices that you make. And I don't know if you could talk a little bit about that. I also was struck by this idea that you were saying about the various references, right? Like, well, this is a particular desk from this time and all of that. And I think I just really love that of how, again, the many experiences, the places you've been, all the things that you've referenced really come out in your work.
Yeah, yeah. I wish I could say that I had planned or planned the way color works in my work. But
Yeah.
yeah,
You
they
don't
seem to
have to,
make
you don't, there
themselves.
doesn't, it doesn't
No,
have to
no, it's
be
fine. I
something,
want
but yeah.
they do seem to make themselves. I think what starts is yeah, with this particular, group of work, what started was trying to figure out the attire of this kind of
Hmm.
sisterhood. What are they wearing? And there were a lot of specificities in that, the kind of long black coat, the kind of sepia floral dress, the layers of skirts, gold and copper. I was looking for something that would signal a kind of, military color scheme, but a military of this world that I've built, so a world of kind of a lot of dust and sand and earth and, some clear blue sky if you're lucky, I guess. And I think that's really what directed it. So from
Hmm.
once this figure was sort of born, her attire was born, her shoes were set, her skirts were right. I think that's when this kind of palette of colors opened up, I would say. And what was the second part of your question was
I don't think there was it was
oh,
more of
okay.
just sort of, yeah, there wasn't, yeah, no, one thing that I think would be exciting for us to think about and talk about right now is really the relationship of the drawings to the
Yeah.
finished work, as your show is made up of both. And it would be
Yeah.
lovely to hear you talk a little bit about that relationship.
Yeah, I've loved yeah, presenting these drawings. This is the second, I'd say, show that I've done this, where I've kind of offered the kind of works on paper as a sort of separate but related group to the paintings. I think prior to this, all of this kind of drawing work would happen just on the painting itself or under the painting itself, I guess. So there was a lot
Mhm.
of sort of figuring out on the surface that yeah, that I use to kind of build the work from. And what I really have enjoyed doing, going back to kind of working on paper, and working on paper was I think how I started really. I really defined myself as a drawer and held on to working for paper for
Mm.
working on paper for a long time. And what's been so fun about letting myself work in this way is being reminded of how much gesture can communicate in the way that I build an image. So getting to work on paper means that I get to remember how to be less fussy about what happens. Remember that kind of fast gestural language that you can kind of only get from preparatory drawings. And yeah, it's lovely. It's lovely to leave them in this state and see how much they can still convey in this state as well.
Yeah.
And then it's this great practice. So I've kind of figured out a lot of kind of compositional questions. And it also helps me kind of edit down the number of images or moments I want to really focus on in the narrative. That often the drawings, there's triple the number of drawings that then become paintings in the end. And yeah, some drawings don't need to go further than just being drawings sometimes. And that's really fun about this process too. I think last year I worked on a show at the Barbican, and it also kind of had this cinematic, narrative that drove all of the images.
Sure.
And in that case, and I see in this case too, I allowed myself to think about the drawings as almost a storyboard, the way that filmmakers might sort of think about key plot moments using storyboard, and that language became super useful for me when I was making this group of work as well.
Yeah. And do you think, you mentioned that some of the drawings didn't necessarily then become another work. Do you think you would ever return to those drawings and make them that
Yeah,
way? Or
for
do you,
sure.
yeah,
Especially when I see them like this, I'm like,
yeah,
oh yeah, that one,
yeah.
that one's good. Maybe I should, I should
You're
pick
like,
that
oh,
one
right,
up.
that should be,
Wait, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, 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 definitely.
I mean, I think that's just also part of it, right? As you're talking about this world that you are building and all of the various aspects and how it doesn't start and stop with each exhibition, but that it is
Yeah,
actually continuing. I think that
yeah,
does offer you the space
for
for that in
sure.
a way that would still be very cohesive to your
Yes,
work
it's yeah, I
practice.
mean you really nailed it. Like I feel really lucky that I finally figured out a practice that allows me to not have to stop and start over and over. Like the yeah, yeah, everything is sort of part of the same statement for me. And I think, dipping in and out of drawing in this way has helped make that connection over the years for sure.
That's great. Um, Thank you, Pamela. I think now is the moment where we will open it up. If there are any questions from our audience, please feel free to type into the chat and I will read them. Um, and we can also, if people have things they're thinking about, I'm happy to also continue asking Pamela a question and then sort of enter in, so don't feel pressure if you're sort of formulating that at this moment. But I think another thing, Pamela, sort of that I am always really fascinated by, and something that particularly at this time of year, when it sometimes feels like the year has been a lot, and continually and really thinking about how do we sort of keep going, particularly when you have a practice that is somewhat is creative, but also is very public. And really, after you have a show like this, what are some of the things that you sort of listen to or watch or read in order to sort of like decompress that aren't necessarily, oh, this is about work all the time?
Right, right, right. Yeah, I've been my best, maybe worst, kind of decompress stuff that I read are like Agatha Christie novels.
Those are amazing. So yeah, uh-huh.
Yeah, and I think everybody's trying to do this. I've been trying to kind of claw back my attention span after, a good too many years being sort of stuck in the world of my phone. And something that I find really useful in helping me to kind of build back up my ability to read for long periods of time has been these like juicy little crime novels where yeah, quickly a kind of whole drama unfolds and is like tidily solved by the end of it, with the kind of added bonus of like you as the reader receiving information that could solve solve the crime too. So this kind of
Yeah,
like it's a problem, but there's always a solution by the end, and you can also help with the solution along the way. I find,
yeah.
find that really, really helpful at this time.
Yeah, no, my version of that is a lot of sort of um well, Murder She Wrote always is sort of
Yeah.
like that
Oh,
anchor
yes. All the time.
television show that I like watch, but then the like British shows where the detectives are not detectives, like it's
Right.
oh, they're a hairdresser or they're
Yeah.
like all
Yeah.
these other things. I'm like, oh, absolutely. Like
Yes.
if I was in some seaside town somewhere, I would be ready. I would be
Yes.
ready to solve. So,
Yeah,
the
don't put me on a little river cruise boat with with a bunch of interesting characters with like, dodgy backstories.
it would just be out and be like, oh, obviously
Yes,
this
okay,
is
I'm ready. I'm ready.
right. I'm ready. And I think, there's just, yeah, something to really think about this. So we have a question. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about paint. Is it very thin, layered? Is there underpainting and that it's beautiful?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, paint. Yeah, I think it's really clear in the work that I build the work in really thin layers. I think this comes again from maybe really thinking about the work first as drawing. I feel I can't start to kind of even engage with paint until I'm really fully happy with the drawing stage of the works. And so there's a lot of shifts and changes and kind of erasing and redoing that happens before the paint even starts. And so I think a lot of that kind of gesture and kind of history of how many times it took me to get the drawing right um,
Hmm.
builds kind of a foundational layer in the work. And I don't really like to lose that. And so I think for that reason, I really build the layers of paint really gently to kind of preserve that underworking.
Yeah, thank you for that. Um, Another question that I have is sort of also thinking about, and I feel like maybe it's just because, oh, it's, November 21st, and we're sort of there. I'm like, oh, what's something that you're looking forward to in the next few months that you're really excited about or thinking a lot about?
Yeah, that's a good one. I am, yeah, let's see. What am I really excited
Yeah.
about? I, Oh, I'm really excited to be visiting my family in Canada this year. It's been a couple of years since I've been back. And so I'm going with my son and my partner. And yeah, looking forward to like, proper wilderness and some snow. Yeah, it feels really indulgent to say that, right? To just say that I'm going on a
No,
nice day.
yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking forward to.
I know. It's very similar. I'm looking forward to like in layers, but next week, like going to my sister's house with our family and just sort of being there and, just being able to sort of spend that time
Yeah.
in the places that are important with the people that are important. So no, I think that's the more that we can do that or make space for that, I think continues, at least for me, helps me sort of keep going with all the other things.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That's great. If we have it, we have time for one more question. Let's see, and then let's see. Great, I can read this. I will read this for everyone. This person has been following your work for some time, and they want to know how you develop the context and the surroundings of the characters. And are you
Oh,
also collaging from experience, or does the setting come once your characters are developed with the details that you mentioned?
yeah, that's a good question. I am not exactly sure. I think it can be both. So I, often, especially when I'm going to places that are important to me, home places or landscapes that I kind of want to make sure and make a note of. I do often take a lot of photographs as I'm traveling to just kind of remember things, whether it's like details of architecture or strange rooms or,
Mhm.
strange, kind of sites or landscapes. So I do have kind of a big uh, kind of archive of just personal photography. I feel really lucky as well that I inherited my father's kind of amateur photography collection of all of our travels and sort of different work
Amazing.
postings over the years that I was a child. I think my dad was really passionate about photography, but and definitely as an amateur. And so he wasn't too fussy about anything, which means that his archive is just such a random selection of stunning things that I remember to kind of strange, blurry moments that, trigger another kind of memory. And so I think those kinds of images also, feed the way that I build spaces in the work. And then yeah, just this kind of big gathering of references, whether it's sort of painters, filmmakers, illustrators, uh, things from art history that I really borrow, really freely from, a bit of a pilferer in that way. And I think, yeah, I don't really, I think differentiate between any of those materials when I'm sort of thinking about a space that I want to set these stories in.
Yeah. Thank you. What an amazing thing to have the archive from your
It's
father's
really
those
cool.
photos.
Yeah,
That's
it's
yeah.
really, really cool. And it's yeah, it's from just before I was born and all through, my whole childhood. And yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you again, Pamela, for really taking the time. There's just one other comment that I'll read that's just that this person loves the way you're able to get and paint so many expressions, and that it can really what you're able to convey. So truly, thank you for that, and thank you for taking the time today.
Thanks a lot. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
I just wanted to really thank both of you, and Pamela, it's so precious to see you with us. It's, due to the situation at the border, you weren't able to come. So thank you. And Lauren, to have your beautiful comments and to see the relationship between the two of you, it's been great for us and I think wonderful for our audience. So thank you to our virtual audience who joined us. We hope you will come in and see the show. Parabellum is on view through December 20th. And eventually, after it's edited, this conversation will be online and people can review it or you can share it with your friends. But thank you, and thank you, Eve, for organizing, and thank you to the gallery staff who has all participated, and to Catherine, who has held up Pamela, through the years. So thank
Thank
you
you so
all,
much.
and come and see us in person. Okay.
Yes.
Take bye bye and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.